to just make.
That's one place I never want to visit.
Be reminded that the Russians live like that. I want to ask you about this. So one of the big things that I think is a huge problem that's about to happen in the world is pornography addiction, right? I believe it's humongous. I believe it's bigger than alcoholism. I believe it's like the wave of it that we're starting to see, like people really suffering from it. I think it's one of the reasons why there's a lot of divorce. What do you see like neuroscientifically about how people can start to manage that? And then even just what you just talked about dopamine, it's like, I think it's helping people realize with that it's like such a hole that you're getting into. Whatever that thing is called, no pun intended. How can people start to cut that off for themselves? Is there anything they can do, or do they have to get help if they believe that they're suffering from like pornography or sexual addiction?
Yeah. Super important questions. I'm so glad you're raising this because, it's interesting. If you look at the research on pornography and sexual behavior generally, right? What you'll find mostly in the academic studies of those areas is kind of an attempt to normalize a lot of behavior. There are reasons for that, some pseudo-political, some just kind of the way those studies were done for a long time. But it's really important to emphasize that it takes a while for science to catch up to culture.
Okay, it takes a while for science to catch up to culture.
Yeah, and the reason is not because scientists are lazy or they're uninterested, is that doing science well takes a long time. Look, I've run studies in my lab on animals, on humans, clinical trials. It takes a long time, like 3-4 years sometimes.
To get real information?
To get a really good study done. Meanwhile, life is happening. And in the last 5 years especially, there's been an exponential growth of the amount of pornography available online, the different formats, right? OnlyFans, all the different sites that people can go to.
Oh yeah,
free, paid, AI. And within each of those, there's also been a huge amplification of what's called like high intensity porn. What's high intensity porn? It's more than two people. It's BDSM. Now, BDSM is its own discussion that maybe we could talk about at some point, just separately, about this merge of pain and pleasure. That the reason, the punchline is that dopamine is also increased by what we call the cessation of pain. When pain starts and then stops, you get an amplified dopamine surge. So a lot of people are watching or engaging in what we would call violent porn, right? And we're, as primate species, humans, we have an empathy. So when people are watching pornography, they're obviously not experiencing the same things exactly those people are doing and experiencing, but they're tuning into it, right? Yeah. They're getting to it. And we can only speculate as to what they're doing to themselves, right? Yeah. Typically when we're talking about porn, let's just be direct, we're also talking about masturbation, right? Typically when we're talking about watching video porn, sometimes it's women, most often it's men by a huge majority.
Oh right? Yeah, the men are the one watching it.
Yeah. Although, years ago I had a girlfriend, a woman I was dating very seriously, and she confessed to me that prior to our relationship, she had developed a porn compulsion. It wasn't an addiction. An addiction, again, is a progressive narrowing of the things that bring you pleasure. It hadn't taken her to the point where it was destructive, but she had the wisdom to cut herself off from it early on. Okay, so it does happen with women, but it's much more frequent with men. So here's the thing. We can think of pornography now as like the methamphetamine of pornography compared to the pornography of, we always hear about, like when I was growing up,
drawings,
the Playboy or the thing when I was a kid, like I'll confess, didn't know I was going to do a confession, but they had those like sex education books where they were like sketch drawings in pencil.
Oh yeah, bring them up.
And when I was, probably 14, 13, I was like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
This was awesome. But it was about, teaching you basically about sex. It was teaching you about body parts. And that was,
for sure,
man. Pencil drawings. I can't believe we're looking this up.
No, it's interesting because I think a lot of people probably.
If you do pencil drawings, who knows what kind of freaky stuff's going to jump up here.
No, we have a blocker on, I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
There we
dude.
go. There we go. So
Yeah.
had some, see, human loving. This is very different than today's porn.
Sex
right?
and I love how they used to call it human loving.
Human loving.
That's nice though. There's
Yeah.
something, at least it makes more sense. It puts it in your head into something, instead of like Britney's butt world or whatever, which takes it to a whole different deal.
And there was no discussion whatsoever of elements of pain or BDSM or power play. There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
God, that's
for a
nice.
heterosexual young male, the fact that they put her naked facing us as opposed to the guy on the other side, you're like, okay, cool. But the other thing about pornography is that it, in a young brain, this is very important.
Mm-hmm.
It relates to everything we're talking about today. From about age 0 to 25, your brain is incredibly plastic. It's modified by experience just by being in those experiences.
When you say plastic, you mean it's more like it's not as solid yet?
That's right. You can literally
Plasticity.
wire neurons, plasticity. You can wire neurons to other neurons very readily. I mean, this was known for a long time, but it was really formalized by my scientific great-grandparents, David Hubel and Torsten Wiesel. They won a Nobel Prize for showing that if you take a cat, a monkey, or a kid, and you close one eyelid for just a few hours each day, the brain becomes blind to visual input through that eye once you open the eye up, unless you do something else like close the other eye in order to reverse that plasticity. However, if today I just
Wow.
said, that's how fast and permanent it is unless you do something to reverse it. But if I did that same thing to you now or me now, there'd be no brain change. You close your eye, obviously you can't see through a closed eye. Pop open the eyelid later, you see just fine. So we know that until about age 25, the brain just modifies itself based on experience. So if you're doing cocaine, amphetamine, or let's just stay with this example, you're watching high intensity violent porn with more than 2 people, right? We forget that every time you add another person, even if it's 2 women and 1 guy, or it's, what's this woman on X? I mean, I have to say it gives me
sick.
an aversive response,
Yeah.
which I think is the healthy response. Every time
Makes me sad.
she announces, I think she's like sleeping with 100 and then 1,000 people. And listen, she's obviously in
she's
control of
sleeping
her
with
own
the Western
life.
Conference right now. I think I just saw the other day. I don't know what is it Barbara Blue?
Bonnie Blue.
Body Blue.
Yeah.
Bonnie.
I mean,
Bonnie
this is like methamphetamine with heroin, and you get the picture. It's starting to layer in all these different things. And so you think about the young male brain in particular, young female brain watching this stuff. And it's not just setting a behavioral expectation, because we always hear about that. They think sex is like that, and it's not. It's setting this incredibly high threshold for what they consider stimulating. Not just stimulating sexually, but stimulating mentally.
Oh, yeah.
And,
I mean,
it's crazy. It's like, listen, I like playing cards every once in a while. So you go play a card game with your friends. It'd be like the first time you play cards, you got $1 million. You're back there in the high stake. You're in like the Dana White room, right? Like I know, like when I see sometimes his gambling hands, right? He's
it's wild.
but he can afford to play,
Right.
And he also knows where that fits into the rest of his life. But you think about a kid. You have a chance to win $1 million. Actually, there's this scene in that movie, that show. Remember Succession?
Yes.
A show that it's all about dopamine. This family of rich brats who are completely corrupt. Everything's about more. Dopamine has been called in a book, I forget the author, the molecule of more. It's all about wanting more. And there's this dreadfully sad scene where they go out to play, I think it was like a baseball game or something, and they bring their garden help, and they take the kid and they say, hey, if you can hit a home run, these people's kids, people are clearly, and they say, if you hit a home run, you have $1 million. And you see the anticipation. This would transform these kids and their parents' life. And then he doesn't get the $1 million. And they give him like some watch that's probably worth $25,000. This is dopamine reward prediction error in a nutshell. Had they given him the watch, the family probably would have been pretty thrilled. They could sell it, they could use it. Had they not been involved in the game, their dopamine is the same as when they go home at night. But they had a chance at $1 million. Yeah. And when they didn't get that, it drops them below baseline. And then you see the kid that evening, like sitting around his apartment, just completely despondent with the watch sitting there as if it was worth nothing. That's dopamine. And when you think about pornography, that's what young people are being exposed to. So their first sexual experiences not only are quite different. Remember, pornography is about, obviously, people are getting aroused by watching other people have sex.
Oh, yeah.
And, I don't know what kind of sex people are having out there, but in my experience, the whole the whole business of sex and learning how to have great sex is about learning to be in the experience with somebody, and it's a communication, it's an ongoing communication, and it's about being in the experience, being present, not watching someone else have sex.
Oh yeah, I was thinking the other day, watching some other dude like have sex with a woman, it's kind of, I don't even know if it's homoerotic. I don't know what it is. It's definitely when you take a step back from it, it's a little bizarre. It's definitely intrusive, right? But for surely it alters the way that you think about things. I mean, I know in my own life, I got exposed to pornography real early. I would bike across town to get a little look at some pornos.
Perfectly normal behavior for a young male.
Pretty normal. Yeah. I was breaking into houses to frickin',
I had friends like you growing up. Where did you grow up?
Louisiana.
Right.
Yeah.
I had friends growing up. I mean, in South Bay, Palo Alto was pretty tame, but when I started getting into the skateboard thing,
sure.
We drew from kids from all over. And listen, I'm very grateful for that early exposure.
Oh yeah, it's easy to jerk off to if you get some good graffiti.
Oh no, I meant early exposure to kids that from all walks of life. But I knew kids like you breaking into houses.
Oh dude, yeah, I remember. Yeah, it would be crazy. You would just like breaking in that, just like, we made some poor choices. But I think the fact that, here's one thing I noticed for myself, right? So, well, I had like a lot of I had kind of a disorder, I guess, where like I had some intimacy issues where I couldn't, I'd had like some issues, like just like probably with my mom from growing up of not having a connection. And so if I got around a woman, I got very nervous, right? It was like a very extremely nervous, right? So I think it made it like once I saw pornography, I was like, okay, well, here's a way that I can be near a woman or near as a female where I can have some form of intimacy without having to have a real person there. So that for me was, it was okay. It made sense that's how I adapted to it as a kid or how I understood it as a kid. It makes sense. But as an adult, it didn't help me at a certain point. And then the secondary part for me was, you would see sex like in images or scenes or a way a camera's set up. And so then that's how you start to think of intimacy. It's like, okay, well, we have to do this scene. It's not like you would stage things around your room or anything. You didn't have any cameras or anything, but you would just you thought of each thing as like a scene or a scenario. So,
you're not out there shooting baskets. You're trying to recreate the NBA final,
Right.
That's a lot of pressure.
So it was a ton of pressure. So it was and you almost couldn't even, there was no real connection. So that for me was a real cul-de-sac of trying to figure out how